Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Cirque du Soleil episode of the A to Z of Property Strategies with the DJ David Clouter. Welcome David.
Hello and thank you Mr. Andrew Roberts.
And here we are. Last week we did the I's. This week, because we've completed the I's, we're on the J's. Now, I don't know if we're turning Japanese, I really think so, David, but it looks like we're in for a bit of circus fun today.
Funny you should mention that, because this first strategy we're talking about today is a J and a K. It's Japanese knotweed, which is a kind of bamboo-y type plant that the Victorians brought over here, didn't they, to strengthen railway embankments, which is, to be fair, it's very good at strengthening railway embankments. They're not going to tumble if they've got Japanese knotweed going through them, but the thing that is going to tumble is your houses, and they can go through concrete and brick walls better than a kind of jackhammer, really, kind of almost faster, and I've seen them totally destroy things. A friend of mine who is a developer, somehow some Japanese knotweed got 2 meters below some concrete that was in one of his properties, and it just poked its way straight up through it as if it wasn't there, like a sort of knife through butter. So it's kind of nasty stuff. In Japan, it grows naturally, and there are predators that eat it, which is fine. The pesticide that kills it was banned by the EU. I think people are still allowed to sell it, but it's not allowed to be made anymore. I do know a bloke with a van who's got some, and it's quite legal to use it. So that's one possible avenue there. And another thing that's been looked at is finding the natural predators for this thing and actually sort of releasing those. So there are trials going on with that at the moment, but there are certain parts of the UK that have got a lot of this kind of stuff. Google it, find out what it looks like, and if there's any possibility, even if it's next door or whatever it is, run a mile. And another way to deal with it is to remove about 2 meters of topsoil completely. So we're looking at fairly radical solutions, and these solutions, some of them may go on 3 or 4 years before you can be clear of this thing, but boy, does it grow. Except if you were to put it, I bet if I put some in a flower pot at home, as with all of my pot plants at home, it would probably shrivel up and die. But other than that, it's something to be aware of. Your property that you've just bought can go from 100,000 valuation to 0 if you've got knotweed. So it is something to be very well aware of. However, if you know the way to treat knotweed, you can buy that 0 property for £1 and then and deal with the knotweed and make a bit of a profit.
You certainly can, and what I would add to that is if you're treating this property, and I've come across properties that have had this before, get a warranted contractor in to do it and get yourself a 10-year warranty that basically it's insurance backed. It's not just the bloke in his van saying, yeah mate, I'll dig out the soil and I'll take it away. You've got an insurance backed warranty that if it should recur, you are indemnified, and that policy is also transferable to successors in title, because if not and you come to remortgage, or if not and you come to sell, you're not gonna do that. So anyway,
do you know
I'll stop clowning around.
I had a guy once on a site who thought he'd be quite helpful, and he went at the Japanese knotweed with a strimmer. Little bits of it flying everywhere.
So basically, he was really good at propagating it and creating more of it. Yeah. Not very smart. Not very
the
smart.
Smartest guy on the block, but anyway.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about a strategy that doesn't really work anymore, but just for historic reasons. Ole! Oh, yeah. Whoa. It's the way he does it, whoa. You're a natural, if I may say so. JVs, joint ventures, there are a number of ways to do these kind of things. And one way that used to work terrifically in the past, and I don't believe, as far as I know, this doesn't work anymore, is the JV gifted deposit. And that used to be a great thing up to about, 2006, 7 or something, where the vendor would gift you the purchase price of the property. And essentially what he's doing is selling it to you for a bit cheaper, and it just goes on the land registry a bit higher. So that was a sort of dodgy kind of thing. People might still come across it. Somebody might propose to you, hey, let's do that. But for me, that particular one, and I think for the entire banking community and everybody else as well, that one is now no longer a thing.
Well, there is still gifted deposits, but it's with conditions. So if parents gift a deposit, then there is no return of that deposit, and the parents have to sign a document to say they have no claims over the property, blah, 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 blah. Small print, read it.
Yeah, it's because lenders, quite reasonably, I think, want you to have what they call skin in the game. They want you to have a proportion of something there. And we did this recently for our son, and we gave him some money, and then the lender gave us a piece of paper to sign saying, we don't want this money back under any circumstances, even if we're about to lose our homes and be expelled to a fort in the middle of the sea. Then, there's no way to get it back. But, fair enough. I suppose the theory is that if somebody puts their own money into this thing, they're going to be a bit more diligent about looking after it and about behaving responsibly. So you can see the logic to that. But other than that, probably there's no other way to do it. Especially if you bring money in from some kind of. There are a few countries that are quite trusted, aren't there? But there are a lot of countries in the world that are not trusted quite so much. So that suitcase full of money from Colombia might not go down too well as a deposit. Certainly didn't work for me last time. I ended up in chains. So the next kind of JV, I mean, there are lots of types of JVs, but I'm doing two specialist ones, and then we can talk about it more generally. A JV with where somebody has got poor credit. And this is also, I think, one that's possibly a bit on the fringes, where somebody else takes out the loan and then you service it. And I think, again, that this is a real no-no.
Yeah, well, let's put it like this. JVs is a very difficult subject, and you've got to approach it with a lot of caution. And I think JVs, we covered it under D, due diligence. That's something that goes hand in hand. So if you didn't see that episode, we'll drop a link in the box below so you can actually pick up on the due diligence that you should be doing with a JV partner, so that we don't repeat ourselves here. But we also have a series coming out on due diligence soon, so hit subscribe on our channel and you'll find out more.
Excellent. So yes, that kind of summarised it in a nutshell. It's very good to work together because, together everyone achieves more, team, but you have to do it now in good and sort of very carefully and actually for the benefit of everybody, prescribed ways and sort of nothing. If it seems dodgy, it probably is. That's perhaps the takeaway.
Yeah. And the other thing is, just because you like somebody doesn't mean to say that they're the ideal JV partner. You're running a business. Because you're running a business, check the skill sets you need to run a business. You don't need two cleaners in a business. You need a chief executive, a finance director, a marketing, and operations. Check that your skills actually dovetail together and that you're not duplicating, because if you duplicate skills, there's little value that you're adding by having that person as your business partner. So it's very important to get a mixed balance.
That's very, very good advice, Andrew, if I may say so. That totally nails it. Shall we move on to the letter K? Unless you can think of any other J's, I can't really. Jumanji, I don't think that's a property strategy, is it now?
Well, it was in the movie. Perhaps we'll have to do that next.
Absolutely. Now, there's only one K, so we're racing through the alphabet, and it's keep one, flip two. And that is a strategy that a lot of people I know have used very successfully. Developers who are building something, and obviously it would be nice to keep three, but sometimes the numbers don't just stack particularly well, particularly down here in the south. Absolutely no way. Although actually sort of up in the north, it might be cheaper to sort of buy a property rather than build one. But that's another story for another day. But this strategy that I've seen people employ involves them getting development finance, getting a piece of land, getting the planning, building the things, and then selling two of them, and the profit from those two allows you to refinance number three and keep it as a thing. And I came across a portfolio actually recently that was on the market, and there were 80 properties in this portfolio, and Grandad or whatever had been a property developer, and for each development that he had, he just kept one. No big deal really, but to pass on to the grandkids, and then they ended up with quite a sizable portfolio spread nicely across the region. So that kind of that kind of thing can work, I think.
No, it's a great strategy, and it's often used as a momentum strategy where basically you can buy no money down because you're actually using the money, the profit that's coming off the two that you flip and trade on. The caution and the caveat I would probably add to that is don't try and buy three in the north of England and sell them. Sell two of them because the sales time is quite long. You want to do, you're buying where the market is hot, where it sells quickly, so you've got a short sales time. And if you look at the data on Rightmove, or talk to your agent and get a Rightmove Plus report off the agent, it will tell you exactly how many days it takes from coming on the market to coming off the market with a sale. Now, that's the important time. In the north of England, I've got staff and offices up there, and it can take 18 months from coming on the market to coming off the market with a sale. Down in Northampton, where I'm based, the last data I saw, it took 36 days from coming on the market to coming off the market. So it's a lot shorter. So if you're going to sell two, make sure you're not hanging in there for a couple of years, because otherwise you've got to fund two empty properties for a long period of time.
Yes, that would certainly play havoc with the cash flow, wouldn't it? And so it's good that down south where you are in Northampton, that it works.
and up round there,
yeah,
it's about the same for you.
You're absolutely bang on the money. Bang on the money. So we've done that one, and let's move to L. We are racing through. We'll be at Z, by the time we finish today's episode. I should think the rate we're going. I know. Now,
I'm loving this circus. It's awesome.
It's absolutely terrific. I'm going to go and join the acrobats at the end, I think, and do a bit of trapezing.
Well, I'm just looking forward to the lion taming.
Yay! Now, L is for land banking. Now, we've probably come across this in the context of supermarkets, perhaps, but obviously there are other applications of this as well. And supermarkets will often buy lots of bits of land near the road and in sort of prime areas where they've already got a store in the area and they don't want one of the rivals to build one. And they'll just sit on this, and it costs them very little, but it just ensures that something else goes into that place. Sometimes they will land bank it for their own use, and there's one very big supermarket group, which we won't name, but it's in the top 5, who are a bit naughty, and they will put in applications for example, a carpet warehouse, and this goes through planning, and they get it, Joe's Carpets, and then there's an application for a change of the commercial classification, and what do you know? Suddenly it's al fresco or whatever, and so this kind of thing does go on. My mentor used to do a thing where he used to advise people, but this was in the days of not quite the gold rush, he wasn't quite that old, but in the days of America rolling out a lot of infrastructure, because that's where he was based, and towns and cities were expanding, everything was growing. So he would advise a lot of his clients to land bank next to highways, just by a long thin strip, which inevitably later on it was going to be shops or garages or this kind of thing, and those prices absolutely skyrocketed. Some of my friends in Eastern Europe, in Poland, for example, at about the time that communism was collapsing, they were land banking like mad, and they were buying literally for the price of a packet of cigarettes a hectare of land. And then later, then they would do a bit of title splitting and a bit of this and that, which we'll come to later in our thing. And what do you know? They've multiplied their money. They put a lot of zeros on the end of that initial investment. I suppose your land bank might be in the shape of a ransom strip, perchance. There are a lot of ways to store up land. Again, we'll come to that when we get to the R's. But there are a lot of ways, clever ways, in which basically land banking is you can buy land either that you don't want your rivals to have, or that will be of such strategic importance that further down the line, not too much further down the line, it's going to be worth a heck of a lot more than you paid for it.
Well, I tell you what, your Polish friends no longer have a packet of cigarettes or a parked bit of land. They've got a ginormous lorry full of cigarettes in exchange for it.
They've got the whole plantation.
Probably. But also land banking is used by developers as well, because what they will go round and do is tie up under option agreements, which we'll cover later under O's. We're covering an awful lot, or mentioning an awful lot of stuff that's still to come, so there's an awful lot to hang in for. And developers will control a piece of land. So they will lock out other developers from acquiring that particular field. And often, and I covered this in a great property meeting last night with Linda Wright, where you can't build on Greenbelt ordinarily. However, strategic developments operated by the major house builders who are looking to build several hundred houses will get a planning permission to build on Greenbelt. But if you approach the planners and say, I'd like to build something, just 2 houses or 2 flats, they will say absolutely not, because they're protecting the Greenbelt. But if it's got a strategic need, then they will acquire that. So it's worth looking at land banking from a number of demographics of businesses that do this. Some people source land bank and hold on to it. Some people hold it for their own personal use. Some people buy it to trade. All of it is very different. And all you've got to do is look at the detail and the model that fits you.
Yes, and obviously one thing that land doesn't do that tenants do is pay you rent. So at best you'll be grazing sheep on it for a bit or something while you wait for something to come into fruition. And that's an important consideration, because if you've doubled your money or something in 10 years but had no income from it, it's not that good when you look at the actual numbers, and you've had a 6 or 7% per annum growth, which you could have probably more than exceeded somewhere else. So don't get too excited if you've got a long a land banking thing, because you haven't done as well as perhaps you might have thought.
No, well, I think you've nailed land banking on the head pretty much in its very simplistic form. There is a lot more to it than that. But now is not the one for us to go into, because we'll deep dive that when we come back and deep dive the topics that you've highlighted that you'd like us to.
Yes, that's what we're going to do further down the line, isn't it? Because this is just this kind of skim thing. It's a bit kind of entertaining. We're just kind of laying bare some of the possibilities. But certainly there are a lot of these that need a bit of drilling down, a lot more attention, and can be. I mean, most of these you and I could probably talk all evening on any single one.
I could probably talk for England and probably until England is no more on most of these. You've probably got that one, haven't you? But I'm loving the clowns at the moment. They're fantastic. They're really good, aren't they?
It's an absolutely fabulous thing to see. Yeah, have we got time to squeeze one more in?
I think we've got time for just one more. Let's give them a bonus today. Come on.
Okay, so this is another land one, and this is land in respect of planning gain. So you've got, and I was visiting somebody today who's got a garden which might have a value of about 10 grand. And with planning, it just goes absolutely stratospheric. And in fact, just as I left, the planning consultant was coming along to have a chat to him. So that is a strategy when it's within itself, because not everybody, and sometimes you see this land can be acquired on an option for £1 and that kind of thing, and then it can be flipped straight on as long as you've got a clause in the contract to say that it's assignable. So that is a fantastic possible way to make some money. You need to use the right people. It's not something that I would recommend sort of doing on your own in your spare time while watching EastEnders or something. Lovely, great series. Lovely, wonderful show for those who are devotees of it. Because I don't want to get into trouble here, into hot water.
I was going to say, other soap operas do exist.
They do. Da, 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 da. Anyway, it's also worth pointing out that outline planning isn't very much, and so it just gives you a sort of rough indication. And if you can find a planning consultant who's a former planning officer, that's kind of quite nice, because he can take his old mates out or ring them up or something, take them out for a cuppa in the cafe and get a sort of informal kind of view on things. And that is quite nice. And find a planning consultant who's got a track record, or an architect who's got a track record, or both working together. And then you can turn a turnip patch or potato field or something into something much more valuable, where the footings start to go in and this kind of thing. And I think I'm right in saying that... because the other thing to remember is that planning permission expires. But I think if you've made a start, then it's okay. So I believe so. Like if you've just put the footings in, then it's okay. The pressure's off. I made a start, and I laid one course of bricks. So then it's less of a concern. But brownfield land as well is something that is increasingly being brought into use. You have to look at that with that at possible contamination and that kind of thing. So there are issues that come with it. But we are not Texas. I suddenly woke up the other morning and I realized that we are not Texas, where you can just buy a piece of land literally at about $6,000 an acre and shove loads of land, and then even when you finish, there's equally the same amount of land as far as the eye can see, stretching as far as the horizon. Being that is one of the things about being a small island, that we're constrained by that sea all around us, and so it does make land that much more of a precious sort of commodity, and so getting that planning gain is a real big deal.
It absolutely is, and one of the things I was actually told by a friend of mine who's a planning consultant is, don't use the word planning gain, use the word planning uplift. Because gain means something to the planners, where that means they can charge you money. So use the term planning uplift. Now, very shortly, we have a series coming out on this channel. So if you subscribe again, called Planning Briefs, actually with a town planner. Well, retired town planner, who's now a planning consultant. So she's a gamekeeper turned poacher. And we will be going through all of the different planning classes, all of the different use classes, and we will be going through prior approvals, permitted developments, outline planning, and more. There's a whole series of videos coming out, all on planning just for you.
Do you know where I think, Andrew, as you almost said at the beginning there, if you've subscribed to that channel, subscribe again.
Absolutely. And drop a comment on what you'd like some help with, and what we will do is endeavour to help you and answer those questions. But I don't know about David, I'm actually going to push back and go and enjoy finishing watching the show at this circus. It's phenomenal. So thanks, guys. See you next week.
Hey!
Bye.